Okay, we're ready to clean some messy data. So as I mentioned in a previous session, I want to make sure that we're not aiming for perfection here. There's a lot of data, in this case 62,000 rows, that we're dealing with here in our example file. And the goal here isn't perfection, but it's data that you can work with to produce the analysis or the output that you want. So in this case, we've got our 11 columns of data. We just scoped the extent of what we're dealing with. We know we've got some date issues, and we know this because we can hit the filter button. We see some erroneous values there for 2018, 2005. We've got some zip code issues with 9 digits, some with 5, some Canadian zip codes. We've got some hashes, some hyphens in there. And then we've got cell errors, and these are shown with a little green arrow, top left of the cell. You can click through and it sees that it's the number stored as a text. So we want to start working with this. One of the things I like to do is have an ID column here on the left, but before we actually change anything, let's copy and paste this tab over. This is a good practice so that if you ever need to revert to the actual raw data, you can. So you can either copy and paste the tab, or you can save it as a new file. So in this case, I'm just going to go to Move or Copy, and I did that by right-clicking on the tab. And example 1 is the one I want to create a copy of. And there's my second tab. The tabs are nice because you can hide, you can unhide, you can color them, you can name them however you want. In this case, let's just hide our example 1 tab, which is our raw data. And this one we can rename correct data. And let's get to work. So let's use a shortcut here. Control-A helps me select the entire spreadsheet. And in this case, I want to sort by the ID. So we go to Sort by ID, smallest to largest, click OK. And it looks like the data is now sorted 1 to as far down as our spreadsheet goes. The Control down key, and I see that 62,038 rows of data. Now we've got that taken care of, let's go ahead and clean up our dates. So in this case, I showed you that there's a 2018 date, a 2005 date. So let's just do this. Let's deselect everything. I'm just going to select 2018 and 2005. Okay, and in this case, it shows me that there's only 4 rows that are affected. In this case, I can just type in 2015 very quickly. If we're dealing with a lot more data, one alternative is to do a find and replace. So how does that work? I can hit Control F, which gives me the find screen, and then I could have typed 2005, so I want to find every instance of 2005 and replace with 2015. Just click to replace all, and it would do its magic. But since we've already changed that, let's go ahead and deselect this, select all once again. And I want to show you, these cells are not formatted as dates, and the reason I know that is it's not rolling up like this is here. All these 2015 dates should be able to roll up and expand into this. If we click on this entire column, we can then right-click, go to Format Cells, and see that there's no format selected. So that tells me that there's either multiple formats selected, there's no format at all. In this case, we want the date format. So we could just select date, and let's just go with this first type. And notice that nothing happens here. So the reason we want to format this as a date is if we're going to write formulas off of this specific column, we need it to return the month or the day or the year. And in this case, Excel doesn't recognize it as a valid date right now just because of the way the data came in. So a trick to get around this is we're going to actually break this data down by doing a text to columns, and we're going to build it back up using some formulas. So let's just, with that entire column selected, I'm going to right-click Copy. I'm going to go to my first available column over here, Control-V, which pastes it. Here's our data. Now I'm going to do Control-Shift-Down key, holding that at the same time. Then I'm going to go up here to my Data tab and Text to Columns. What Text to Columns does is it helps delimit your data, or it can look at the number of spaces or delimiters, which delimiters can be commas, semicolons, spaces, or anything you choose. And in this case, I'm going to go to Other, and I'm going to press the this slash key. There we go. And you'll see the data preview, it splits out that data so that there's going to be a month in one column, a day in one column, and then the year in that next column. Let's click next. Let's just go ahead and finish. So now I have a date here because it copied that date format over from column B. And in this case, this is really just our month. So let's right-click, format cells. We just need this to be a number at this point because the month is just one digit. So this looks correct now. So we're going to scroll all the way to the top. So we've broken it down using the text to columns tool. Now let's build it back up. So I'm in row 2. I'm going to start my formula. And this formula is really easy to remember. It's just date. So when we type that, notice that Excel gives you some hints on how it wants the inputs into that formula. So it wants year, comma, month, comma, and then day. Close your formula and press it. Let's just select the cells where these values are. Close that and press enter. And here's my date. If I hit this bottom right square at the bottom of that cell, it's going to copy all the way down to where Excel recognizes there's no more data. And in this case, all the way down to line 62,039. Now you just saw that there was a lot of pound signs. And the reason is there's not enough room to display everything. To get rid of that, just click on the right-hand side of that column and it'll display all objects there. So now that we've got valid dates, let's go ahead and copy these back over into column B. So I'm going to go back to the very top. I'm going to hold down Control-Shift keys, hit my down key, and then let's just do a copy and paste. And you see this time it gives me a pound reference sign. The reason it does that is because we just copied a formula and it can't reference. It doesn't make sense. So this is where we want to right-click and paste as values. Now we've got the date that we want in a way that we can alter it. And we know this by filtering it, and we can expand and collapse this as we need to. Excel automatically recognizes the months and puts them in there like that. So that is dealing with our dates. We can just delete these columns so we no longer need them. Okay, so now we've got the date column figured out. Let's go ahead and figure out our zip codes. So zip codes, as we said, we've got some dirty data here. The different variations that I'm seeing off the bat are we've got our correct 5-digit zip codes, what we want. And maybe in this analysis, we really want to trim down the ones that are 9 digits long and the ones with dashes in the middle. So I'm going to select both of our origin and destination zip code columns, and I'm going to do Control F because I want to go ahead and take that dash out of the mix. I know that I saw them early on when I was filtering through, and I know that I don't want them. So we're simply just going to make them disappear. And what this says is find the dash, replace with nothing. So I'm going to press Replace All, and you can see it just replaced 2,349 instances of that. Now we see lots of different variations here. Excel has a cell format for zip codes, and if we click on both of these, we can right-click, go to Format Cells, and here under the Special category, we see there's a zip code +4. Zip code's what we want, so let's just press OK there. And we still see variations where we have this cell error. So Excel is still reading this as text, even though this really should be a zip code number. Now we could go through manually and convert all these to numbers, but that's going to be a little too time intensive. So let's show you a quick trick to get around that. This is called using the IFERROR formula and just dividing the number by 1. So I'm going to, in cell L2, write IFERROR. And what IFERROR says is if whatever the operation that you're trying to do is an error, then return this. So in this case, we want to do F2 divided by itself, since it's a number. And if that's an error, then give us F2. The reason we're writing this is we know Canadian zip codes are a combination of letters and numbers. And so that will be an error when you divide it by 1. That's common sense. Therefore, Excel will come back and say, okay, just give me the value that it actually is. In that case, letters and numbers. So let's close out that formula, press enter, and we're going to copy this all the way down. So now what we can do is we're going to copy and paste this back as values. You can see all of those cell value errors just went away. Now we still have some cleaning to do. As you can see, we've got a New Jersey zip code, and this one has 8 digits now. And so we really got a leading 0 there, but Excel recognizes the number chops off the 0, so we're going to have to deal with that here in a second. But for now, let's go ahead and delete this column of data. So now we've got to use a combination of the LEN formula, which is short for length, left, and the concatenate formula to put together these values as we need to. So in this case, we want to just trim off the four digits to the right if the length is more than 6. Now we know why 6. Well, if we filter here, we know that at the very bottom, these Canadian zip codes are 6 digits long, and in some cases, this one's 7. We need to probably take the space out of that one before we do anything too ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and do the if-error statement for this other zip code column. That way we're working with data that's alike. Okay, now we're going to get rid of our spaces in the Canadian zip codes. So let's go ahead and highlight both zip code columns once again, Control F, and this time instead of a dash, I'm just going to do one space. Notice I'm not going to put anything in to replace with, not even a space, because this is going to go through and read any space Excel is going to take out of those cells. Let's go ahead and replace all. 342 replacements. Again, we can filter to make sure it got each and every one of those, which it looks like it did. So I'm going to get smart here, and I'm going to write a formula that's going to help trim off the last 4 digits for any zip code with more than 6 digits in it. So we're going to use a combination of if logic to do that. So let's go back to cell L2, and we're going to write if. This is the length formula, LEN. If length of cell F2 is greater than 6, then we want to take left F2. And in this case, we know that there's just going to be some cells with 3 digits, 4 digits, and 5 digits. Now, why 3? Well, the upper northeast has 2 leading zeros with their zip codes, and Excel is only going to see that as 3 digits. So we may have to write a variation of this formula to get around that. So let's back up here for a second. So if the length is more than 6, that's when we're going to need to take special measures now. So I'm going to do a nested if statement. So if that's true, then let's just report back, or let's go into if F2, or length of F2 is equal to 8, which in this case would be 1 trailing 0. Then left, which is going to take the value starting from the left, F2, 4. We're going to do another nested if statement. So if length F2 is equal to 7, so now there's 2 trailing zeros, or excuse me, leading zeros, left F2, 3. So in this case, where the length is 7, there's going to be 4 digits in the back that we want to chop. There's going to be 3 up front that we want to keep, and there's going to be 2 leading zeros that Excel hasn't put in there. And finally, if length, the alternative here is if the length is 9, which is what we want it to be. And since this is nested in there, we just have to put left F2, 5. Let's just take the whole 5 digits. Now, that's our true statement. As you can see, our logic's a little bit messed up here. So we have this nested logic. We need alternatives if the length is less than 6. And so we know at the very end, we need to write, we just want it to return F2. Let's go ahead and close this out here. We have our false statement. Let's make sure, sometimes you've got to check your parentheses to make sure that we're in good shape. So let's see. And let's just go ahead and include an if here. That'll help us. If length F2 equal to 8, then, okay, so finally, we can say just F2. Close our parentheses up. And gives us a false. So it looks like we've got an error in our formula value that we need to go back and reevaluate. Instead, let's just play around with this, and I'm doing this purposely because I want to show you sometimes this logic can get cumbersome. And so let's just start off with if the length of F2 equals 6, which is a Canadian zip code, then just give us F2. If length of F2 equal to 5, then give us F2. That's a regular U.S. zip code. And then we start into all the other variations, whether it's 8, 7. It looks like we need a 6 here, right? Oh no, we've got our 6. I think we can get rid of this 8. Ah, we need a 9. Here we go. And here's our zip code. So again, I apologize if that was confusing. We've got, in summary, we've got nested if statements using the length formula, which the length will return the number of values. Let's just do, for a quick test, length of this cell and see what it returns. And we really know that the true zip code is 08817. It's but Excel only sees 4 leading digits followed by the trailing 4, so it's only going to see 8 digits. That's why we wrote that formula to get around it. So now we're going to copy this down, and as you can see, Excel just gives me 4 digits. We know that this is correct when we right-click, format cells, and go to special. We should see that leading 0 now. And in this case, we don't. So we're going to need to copy and paste that as a value. So copy. Let's go back over here and paste as values. Now, we should see this, and we're seeing a cell value here, so remember, we can use our IFERROR, M2 divided by itself. There we go. Let's copy and paste as a value. Now, finally, we should be able to format this as a zip code as we want. And there we go. Our zip code formatting is complete for the origin zip. So I'm just going to copy, go back up top, and paste it. Now we're good to go. So now we can just change the cell reference from F over to J. So let's just go do that real quick. We're going to change all these references from F to J. Makes our lives a little bit easier so we don't have to rewrite the entire formula from scratch. Okay, press enter, and then let's copy that all the way down. There we go. So we see this Canadian zip code show up. See some other variations here. And remember, in this column, we just did a copy and paste as values and then an if-error statement. So let's go ahead and copy that. Go back up top. Let's paste as a value. Okay. So again, we see some cell errors here. I'm going to get rid of this column. So let's do IFERROR M2 divided by itself. If not, give us M2, which is going to happen for Canadian zip codes. Let's copy that down. And finally, I'm going to copy and paste as a value here. And there we go. So that is the zip code formatting and zip code cleaning. Again, long process, but it gives you the zip codes you actually actually need. That comes in handy, especially if you're loading this data into any kind of online tool or transportation management system. Well, one last piece is with weights, we see some decimals. We maybe don't need the decimals, and it tells me there's different formats because we've got some values without decimals, some with. So I'm just going to select that entire column, right-click, format cells. Let's go to the number here. I like using the comma for 1,000 separation. It helps me visually. In this case, I don't care about the decimals. And then select 0 and click OK. And here we go. Here are our weight values. So that is how we just cleaned up this spreadsheet. Again, just to recap, we used a variety of formulas, including the IFERROR formula, the date formula, the LEFT formula, the length formula, LEN, and we used all that in order to clean up zip codes, text, finding and replacing values, and to get our data in a manner that we can now use it in other applications.